Hello, beautiful people, and welcome, to our first video about actual Fontaine. Woohoo! So, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the leak floodgates have started to open, and so we will be talking about leaks in this video. So if you're trying to avoid them, you want to go into Fontaine just completely blind, here's your spoiler warning. We will definitely be talking about leaks in this video. We are going to be going over basically every single thing. It's not going to be like a massive in-depth analysis, but it will be basically my initial early thoughts on each of the new things that we're getting in 4.0. You can expect videos that go more into depth into each of the things once we get more information. I will obviously, as always, be doing my pre-release analysis. I will probably be doing a video specifically on the artifacts and the weapons. So let's just get right into it. I disabled the images just to try to avoid DMCA stuff, because honestly, like, the images don't matter. I'm not interested in the images. I'm interested in the content. I'm interested in the substance, you know? Let's look very quickly with the artifacts. When I first saw the two artifacts, I did not believe it. Mainly because of this one, Golden Troupe. Chat is a little bit in the way. I'm sorry, chat, but you're gonna have to go away. 2-piece increase elemental skill damage by 20%. 4-piece increase elemental skill damage by 20% again. And then additionally, when not on field, elemental skill damage will be increased by, will be further increased by 20%. This effect will be cleared 2 seconds after taking the field. What that means is that you're getting 60% skill damage. As long as you're not like an on-fielder that needs to stay on field, you're getting 60% skill damage. That's a very, very large amount. For comparison, as of the current version of the game, as of 3.8, Fischl's best artifact set is a little bit up in the air, but it's kind of a toss-up between 2-piece, 2-piece, Electro EM, Electro Attack, and 4-piece Gilded. I usually just play her on 4-piece TF because I have good TF pieces and I'm too lazy to change. 2-piece damage percent, 2-piece attack is just straight up worse than 2-piece damage percent twice. If you could do 2-piece damage percent twice on Fischl, that would be 30% damage. This is 60. Now, skill damage does apply to Fischl's Ascension 4. So when I saw this for the first time, I was like, there is no f***ing way this is real. This has to be the sussest, most unreliable leak. But it turns out that apparently it is real. So assuming that this doesn't get changed, this will by far be Fischl's best set, and it's not even going to be close. I count it to be anywhere between like 12 and 18% damage increase, generally hovering around 15% on basically every single one of her teams. It's fucking insane. This set is not actually that great on too many units right now, because most other units that care a lot about skill damage either have another set that just does even more for them, like Albedo, or it is good on them, but only about as good as the other options. I mean, even on Albedo, it's not like really behind Husk. Is just around the same amount. On Nahida, if you build her for damage, it's pretty similar to Gilded. Yai, it's a little bit better than her other options, but she can't take full advantage of it because in a lot of the teams where you use her, you do end up on-fielding her a little bit, so you're gonna lose the off-field part of it sometimes. And Yai has a decent portion of her damage coming from her burst compared to Fischl, who doesn't. That being said, on Yai, it is still quite good. The main thing that makes this set really nice is that it's, what's the word for it in English? You know what? F it. This is Fontaine Leaks. I can use French expressions. It's a passe-partout set. that stands for like pass everywhere, basically. One size fits all, yeah. It's gonna be decent on a lot of characters. Then this one is a little bit more interesting, I guess. 2-piece normal and charge attack damage plus 15%. 4-piece when current HP changes, crit rate will be increased by 11% for 5 seconds, max 3 stacks. Now, if you can maintain full uptime on this, it's broken. 33% crit rate is a lot of stats. The main potential issue is that it could be difficult to maintain good uptime on it. So you're likely going to find yourself in one of a few situations. Either you're playing a character who can maintain good uptime on this, but doesn't really do normal and charge attacks. So someone like Shao, for example. Depending on the team where you use him, it can either be slightly better or slightly worse than Vermilion. But he can't take advantage of the first part of the passive, so it's not just straight up better. Or you're going to be with characters characters that can take advantage of the first part of the passive, but for whom it's going to be difficult to take advantage of the second part. So for example, Hu Tao, right? Hu Tao would love normal and charge attack damage bonus, but Hu Tao's HP doesn't change that often. Her E reduces her HP, but then you don't want to burst until the end of your E, so you only have a way to change your HP once, and you don't really want to play constant healers with Hu Tao. That brings us to some really sus leaks we had for the Hydro Archon. I don't know what to think about them. Like, it's still far enough in the future that leaks on it are incredibly unreliable. But there have been people claiming that the Hydro Archon will drain your team's HP, which would be a way to enable this on basically any character. Why don't you just take a bit of damage to proc it? It only lasts for 5 seconds, and a lot of enemies don't have just attacks that deal 100 damage. They'll have attacks that deal 5,000 damage, and if you take 3 of them every 5 seconds, you're gonna die. Oh, and yeah, for those of you who were hoping for Dea, it's not good for Dea. Emblem is still better. Dea is too energy hungry for anything to beat Emblem. I'm sorry. Like, if you want to play her as a carry, it can be used in conjunctions with healers. Only getting hit once will be enough. It depends on the healer. But like, yeah, there are ways to work around this, and it can be possible to take advantage of this even on characters that don't change their own HP. But it is going to be difficult. And the increase that you get from it on characters, especially on characters that don't care for the 2-piece, compared to their other, like, best option, is generally going to be small enough that it's just not going to be fucking worth it at all with the current roster. Now, if we get characters that can drain their teammates' HP, it might be. I see a lot of people in chat talking about stuff like Ayato and, like, in Nilo teams. Like, no, because you don't care about crit rate in Nilo teams. You're building full EM. Anyways, if you can take advantage of this, it's insane. It's 10 rolls of crit, right? 33 crit rate. It's a lot. It's just going to be hard to do. So like I said, right now we have a few characters that can. We're gonna see once we get to the new characters that there are some that can use this as well. But yeah, so this can be anywhere between alright, fairly situational, but like fine on everyone because you can always just get hit and then you get it, to the best set in the game if we get some characters that drain their teammates' HP. Anyways, I don't want to spend too much time on the artifacts. Overall, they give a lot, but Golden Troupe, we don't have too many characters who can use the skill damage right now. And Marechaussee, we don't have that many reliable ways of keeping your HP changing. Because keep in mind, when you're healing on a character that's full HP, this won't proc because your HP is not changing. Okay, let's take a look at the weapons now. We're getting new Battle Pass weapons and new craftable weapons. And then we're also getting an event weapon and a new 5-star. Let's start with the event weapon. Crossing of Fleuve Cendre. Base attack, 510. Energy recharge, 45.9. So it's a mid-base attack. ER weapon. Increase skill crit rate by 8%. And ER by 16% after using skill for 5 seconds. Goes up to 32 at R5, and it's an event weapon. After you use your skill is when you generate your particles. And gaining energy recharge right after you use your skill means that your particles are going to get increased, right? So it's like the right moments to gain that energy recharge. Realistically, this is not a great sword, but it's a nice, like, guaranteed option for people who don't have fav on characters, on like sword characters that are very energy hungry. That's the main thing about it. It's a nice weapon to add to the roster. It's nothing crazy. All right, let's talk about the new 5-star now. Attack increased by 12% for every party member with the same elemental type as a wielder. Gain 1 gimmick. For every party member with a different elemental type, gain 1 theatrics. It's written like this just to be quirky. Basically, you gain attack based on the amount of party members that are the same element, and you gain move speed based on the amount of party members that are a different element. The move speed doesn't really matter, so it's mainly the attack, and it's 8% if you're the only party member of that element, 16% if there's at least one other, and 40% if there's a total of at least 3. Added with the 12% baseline, what that means is you basically get at least 18% attack in every situation, or sorry, at least 20% attack in every situation, right? Because you get the 12 plus the 8 from being the only party member, and it goes up to 52 when you have 3 party members of the same element. This is a pretty good amount of stats. It's nothing like incredibly insane in terms of what it looks like when you don't have all of the stacks. So it's mainly just a weapon for when you are getting a bunch of the stacks. It is pretty decent on Ganyu though, on like Freeze Ganyu, because It gives a bunch of attack and a bunch of crit damage. Especially if you're doing mono cryo Ganyu, right? If you're playing with Shenhe with 3 cryo units, it's actually going to be a very good option. But even then, it's nothing like insane. It's a decent stat stick, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit more later once we get to the new characters, because this is a signature weapon for one of the new characters. Now all that's left is the battle pass and the free-to-play weapons. Now, the craftable weapons from Fontaine. Now, from what I understand, the battle pass weapons don't replace old battle pass weapons. They just are added as options. So instead of choosing from 5, you choose from 10. Wolf Fang. Damage dealt by elemental skill and elemental burst will be increased by 16%. When a skill hits an opponent, its crit rate will be increased by 2%. When a burst hits an opponent, its crit rate will be increased by 2%. Basically, if you've got multi-hits, bursts, and skills, it increases their crit rate, and it also just, no matter what, increases their damage percent. This is a nice thing to be added because as it currently stands, the Battle Pass sword, the black sword, only buffs normal attacks. And so having a sword that buffs normal attack and a sword that buffs skill and burst damage helps balance it out a little bit, I guess. This is going to be fairly nice for characters like a Hytham that don't have insanely great 4-star options and like don't really work that well with black sword. All in all, it's just a fairly good weapon. It's nothing crazy, but it's alright. Talking Stick. Talking Stick is the worst weapon we've ever had. It's not like actually bad, but let me walk you through it. High base attack, low substat with crit rate is already not the greatest sign, because when you have crit as your substat, you'd rather have low base attack, high substat than the other way around. Attack will be increased by 16% for 10 seconds after being affected by Pyro. This effect can be triggered once every 12 seconds. Elemental damage bonus will be increased by 12% for 10 seconds after being affected by Hydro, Cryo, or Electro. This effect can be triggered once every 12 seconds. Getting affected by Pyro is very easy because Bennett is very good, and Bennett applies Pyro to your current character. Oh yeah, and also there's some changes that haven't been added to this website yet, but it's basically just duration changes. It's not actually numbers changes, at least as of yet. If the weapon stays in its current state, it's complete garbage. The duration isn't the problem. The problem is that this is a battle pass weapon, so you have to compare it to Serpent Spine. The stat line is less appealing than Serpent Spine because, like I said, with crit rate weapons, you'd rather have low base attack, high substat than the other way around. So that's already something Serpent Spine has over it. But then on top of that, you get 16% attack, 12% damage. Now, in terms of like attack and how it converts to damage, most of the time, effects that give 16% attack, if they gave damage instead, they'd do something like 12%. So this is the equivalent of like 24%, incredibly conditional damage percent. Serpent Spine is 30%. Because they're both battle pass weapons and Serpent Spine has a better effect and a better stat line, this is just a bait. There's no real reason to ever get this. Unless, obviously, there's a character release that affects your character's own HP and that removes your Serpent Spine stacks. That could be possible. If that's the case, maybe you see some use for Talking Stick, but at least right now, it's shit. Next up, Ballad of the Fjords. So Polearm, mid base attack, mid substat. When there are at least 3 different elemental types in your party, EM is increased by 120. This is a fairly reasonable buff to Hu Tao. It's just generally better than Deathmatch a little bit. EM is just really good compared to attack percent on Hu Tao. People might see this, say, "Oppa, this is a Shangling weapon," and like, yeah, it's good on Shangling, but it's competing with a cache. So, not quite that much. I think this is mainly a weapon that works on Hu Tao. It's also going to be good on Sino, but yeah. Next up, Sacrificial Jade. So this one is the only weapon that got changes in the beta changes from today that isn't reflected here. This was changed to 32 and this to 40, but it doesn't matter. So this is a low base attack, high substat Catalyst. When not on field for more than 6 seconds, max HP will be increased by, so this should say 32%, and EM will be increased by 40. This is garbage on all of our characters that we have right now. Characters that scale with HP don't care about crit rate, and characters that do care about crit rate don't scale with HP. This is just a completely shit weapon right now. It does indicate to me that they're going to be releasing catalysts with HP scaling, like damage dealing catalysts with HP scalings in the upcoming patches, but right now it's just completely useless. And then finally, the last battle pass weapon, Scion of the Blazing Sun. Base attack is high, so high base attack, low substat. After a charge attack hits an opponent, a Sunfire arrow will descend and deal 60% attack as damage. After a Sunfire arrow hits an opponent, it will increase the charge attack damage taken by this opponent from the wielder by 28%. So basically, you gain damage percent on your charge attacks. Now, I don't know that there's any other thing in Genshin that... Actually, no, that's not true. Mona also increases damage taken, right? Increased damage taken by opponents, yeah. So, okay, if this works like Mona, it's a fairly reasonable, decent charge attack weapon. Obviously, it's competing with Prototype Crescent, so it's not gonna be like an insane upgrade on characters that scale with attack at least, but it's still nice. That being said, if somehow the damage taken is put into a different multiplier than damage bonus, this would obviously be a fucking insane weapon. I doubt it would be. I don't want to dismiss the possibility outright though, because it is possible. It's just I highly doubt it. But yes, overall, assuming that it's just a normal damage percent thing, that'd be pretty good. Yeah, because if it is a separate multiplier, it would be better than the 5-star options in almost every team. It would just be too good. So I doubt it's a separate multiplier. Anyways, all in all for the battle pass weapons, I'd say that I'm not too like impressed with them. A few of them are nice to add, but a few of them are also kind of a joke. It is a little bit unfortunate that we still don't have a great battle pass catalyst, because Solar Pearl is a lot more conditional than it seems, and the new one is HP scaling, which is cringe. Polearm can be good, Sword can be good, Bow can be good, but yeah. And finally, let's get into the craftables. The craftables are generally the part that is the most interesting to me, because it's going to affect more people than the battle pass ones, right? Because everyone can get a craftable, whereas not everyone can get a battle pass weapon. So let's get right into it. First off is a sword, Finale of the Deep. High base attack percent substat. When using an elemental skill, attack percent will be increased by 12%, and you gain a bond of life. Now, what this bond of life does is basically, it records how much HP you gain, or you heal, and once you've healed enough, it gives you an amount of attack based on how much HP you healed, up to a certain point. So basically, this is an actually very good passive. The main issue that you have with it is that it can be difficult to maintain good uptime on it. So basically, right, if you get it to R5, which is a realistic thing with enough time, maybe for the swords it's a little bit harder because there have been a bunch of like fairly good swords, so people probably don't have that many prototypes for them. But still, let's take a look at how good it is at R5. You gain 24% attack, which already is really good for a craftable option. Like, this is a good amount. It's a high base attack, low substat, which is better than low base attack, high substat when your substat isn't crit. So when it's something like attack, you would rather have high base attack, low substat. It just ends up being more damage overall. It gives you 24% attack at the very least from the passive. 24% attack is the equivalent of 5 substats, which is actually just very good. It's like 4.5, but 5-ish substats. And then if you can actually get this, it becomes like actually a really good weapon. Most characters' HP hovers somewhere between like 16k and 22k, because you get almost 5k from your flower, and usually you'd assume maybe 1 plus k from substats, because you're not gonna get perfect substats everywhere. And then most characters' base HP is somewhere between 9 to 10k to 15k. So that basically means that you'll get generally somewhere between 16 and 22k total HP. And at 16k, the amount of attack that you gain from clearing this bond would be 4.8% of 25% of that HP, so 192. And at 22k, it would be 264. So basically, generally it's hovering somewhere around the 200 to 250 attack range, which is the equivalent of another somewhere between 20 and 40% attack, depending on how high your base attack is. This is just a lot of stats. With the introduction of Dendro, a lot of characters have started caring about attack a little bit less, so I have lost my way. I haven't been preaching the Church of Atacamen enough recently, but attack is a good stat. that on characters that scale with attack. It's not just all about crit. And yeah, if you can choose between one roll of crit and one roll of attack, most of the time you'd rather have one roll of crit. But this isn't one roll of crit. This is like a lot of rolls. This is a lot of attack. So if you actually manage to get this, it is really good. The problem is actually getting it. So if you look at basically any character who snapshots, you need to use your skill, then heal for a quarter of your HP, and then you can snapshot. It should count overhealing based on the wording, because it says it absorbs healing for the character based on its base value, and the base value of the healing would be how much the outgoing heal is, not how much you're actually healing. All right, so unlike the Marechaussee artifact set, this should proc even if you're full HP. Now, the potential issue is that if you look at the best healer in the game, Bennett doesn't heal you if you're above 70% HP. So you just don't get this part of the passive with Bennett unless you let yourself get hit under 70% HP. This is mainly going to be a potentially good option on like double hydrosing toe when you're not really needing fav for the energy. Characters like Ayato, just in general, this is a better option than his other 4-star options, like outside of Black Sword, or his other free-to-play 4-star options. Because right now, his best like free-to-play 4-star option is Ishin Blade, and it's just not a good weapon. Like, this is just better, even without proccing this, and then if you proc it, obviously, it's just a lot better. This can be good on Ayaka. From my calcs, depending on how much ER you need, so depending on what team you play, obviously, it can actually be better than Amenoma, even without clearing the Bond of Life, but only in teams where you don't need too much energy, so that's like a thing to keep in mind. But all in all, this is a good stat stick. Like, this is a fairly decent stat stick that has a potential upside. I'd say this is an actual good craftable weapon, and I'm fairly happy with it. Next up, Tidal Shadow. When the wielder is healed, attack will be increased by 24% for 8 seconds. This can be triggered even when the character is not on field. And then at max refine, this is 48%. Same thing, it's a lot of stats. A lot more stats is more good. I don't know if this is really good enough to be better than the other Claymore options on that many characters, but it is fairly good. This one, I'm not sure if it's gonna work on a character that's full HP, so I'll have to do some testing on it. All right, next up, Rightful Reward. This is Polearm, high base attack, HP substat, which is a terrible combination. Characters that care about HP generally don't care about having more attack. So getting higher base attack with HP substat is just bad. When the wielder is healed, restore 8 energy. This event can be triggered once every 10 seconds, and not R5 is 16. This is like fine for Toma if you don't have Fav in teams where you're not using him for Burgeon, right? So in teams like Wanderer teams or something. It's fine on Yao Yao if you don't have Fav, but it's just worse than Fav, so it doesn't matter. All right, next up, Flowing Purity, which is basically the same thing as the sword, the same thing as Finale of the Deep, but it gives damage percent instead of attack. And it's basically, I basically have the same thoughts on it. It's a very good option. It's nice to have. And considering our free-to-play options for Catalyst were garbage, then this is good. I'm very happy to see something like this. Flowing Purity is like a pretty huge thing for any Catalyst user that's like an on-fielder, right? So someone like Klee or Ning, I guess. At the end of the day, it's not going to be better than Widsith for what Widsith is good at, but having a really good free-to-play option is just always good to have. Like, I'm very happy with that. And then the last weapon is the same thing as a Claymore. Song of Stillness. After the wielder is healed, they'll deal 16% more damage. So it's damage percent instead of attack. Same thing, basically. It's nice, although I can't really think of any bow characters that actually care about this that much. But it is always, like, it's a nice free-to-play option. It's a lot more versatile than Prototype Crescent is. But all in all, I like the new craftables a lot. They add a lot of options. I think that was just really nice to have. So I'm pretty happy with them. And finally, all that's left is the characters. Now, obviously, I'll be doing a pre-release for all of these characters, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But basically, Traveler seems to kind of suck. Obviously, it's Traveler, so you'd get the town level constellations for free. You get like an Ayaka burst, kinda, but it moves forward and it doesn't get stopped by enemies, and it moves decently fast. There's a constellation that slows it down, but even with it, it's still like somewhat fast. You're not gonna get every single hit on the enemy. If you were able to get every single hit on the enemy, it can hit up to 14 times with constellations, which is actually a reasonably decent amount of total damage, but we don't have a way to make it like stop. and it doesn't actually seem to push enemies forward from the footage that has been leaked so far. The E, you basically hold and you like pew 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 pew. It's whatever. Hydro Traveler seems to be fairly underwhelming. I'm kind of disappointed. There's also this mechanic that I don't really understand, which is Numa aligned hydro damage. Basically, it's a way to interact with some of the new enemies mechanics where depending on the alignment that you have, you'll like stun some enemies. It's cringe. I don't really care. I hope it's not actually necessary, because that's an incredibly artificial way to limit team building if it is necessary. Next up, we have Freminet, who is a physical cryo piece of shit. I love his kit. I think his kit is incredibly creative and fun, but also his numbers are pretty bad. He's not going to be good, but I'm okay with that. He seems like he's going to be fun. I'm probably going to be going for him. I'm pretty excited, but I'm not excited for the damage, is what I'm going to say. Basically, his E puts him into a stance or whatever, and then he can reactivate it, and based on the amount of attacks that he did during the stance is going to do a different thing. If he didn't do normal attacks, it's only going to deal cryo damage. If he did one normal attack, it's going to deal a mix of cryo and physical, and the more normal attacks he does, the more it gets converted to physical. And so basically, you can either play him as a physical carry doing normal attacks after his E and just vibe like that, or you can play him as a cryo carry and like not use your normal attacks after your E. His burst reduces his E cooldown by 70%, so you can use it basically permanently, and it makes it so that his normal attacks count as 2 for the purpose of his E rather than only 1. So you can, if you want to go physical, you'll basically be able to do like Q and then E and 2 E, E and 2 E, E and 2 E, something like that. And if you want to go cryo, he has an ascension passive where if he uses his skill without it having full stacks, the cooldown is reduced by 1 second. So instead of being a 3-second cooldown, right, because it's reduced by 70% with a 10-second cooldown, it'll be a 2-second cooldown. So you'll be able to E more often. So you can do EE and then some normal attacks to wait, and then EE and keep going like that if you want to play him for like cryo damage. I think that's incredibly cool. It's just such an interesting interaction. I love it, but the numbers just aren't really there. And then finally, when he triggers shatter, damage that his E does is increased by 40% for 5 seconds, which isn't actually very relevant, unfortunately. But yeah, all in all, he's not very good, but he does seem really fun, so I'm still excited for him. Next up, Lynette. I was incredibly disappointed when I learned something about Lynette. So Lynette, basically, she has a Yelan E, kinda. A mix of Yelan E and Kutsing E, where you Yelan E, and when it's over, it's like you do the second part of Kutsing's E. So like she dashes to the enemies that she marked, and she does damage to them. It seems like it can miss, which is fun. The burst deals animal damage and then leaves summon on the field that is going to deal animal damage every second, and it can do elemental absorption to start dealing damage of another element, but the absorption damage isn't actually at the same speed as the base damage. The like animal damage is once every second, the absorption damage is once every 2.3 seconds. Now we're getting actually grief. She has a standard ICD, which means that every 2.3 seconds means that, at least without constellations, she'll only apply element with her infusion every other hit. Her multipliers, because of the E multiplier, are like decent, but they're nothing crazy. They could work out somewhat okay. I am really not expecting great things out of her. Yeah, apparently also she's gonna be getting for free, which doesn't really surprise me too much with this kit. I've looked at like her output, and she can actually output some reasonable damage in teams where you use her with like Farazan on a Wanderer or Shao carry team, or like with Hazel, I guess, but not really enough to be anything like all that interesting to me. Yeah, I think that the main reason why she's free is so that we have a free character that has a Numa alignment and a free character that has the Uzia alignment to deal with whatever the bullshit enemy mechanics are gonna be. But yeah, that's kind of it. She seems alright. And then finally, Lyney. Now Lyney has got a change today that I'm not sure I get. This usually just damage percent. Now it says base attack. I'm not entirely sure if it actually is base attack. If it is base attack, it's better than damage percent, obviously. Lyney is basically a charge attack monopyro unit. Now, the main reason why he's monopyro is because of this passive. When dealing damage to opponents affected by pyro, Lyney will receive the following buffs. Base attack increased by 60%. Now, this could be just damage percent increased by 60%. We don't know. And then for each pyro party member other than him, he receives an additional 20. Even if you don't have other pyro party members than him, even if he's the only pyro, 60% is still a lot. The thing is, if you're hitting, like if you're going for a vape team with Lyney, you're not gonna be hitting an enemy that's affected with pyro, because in order to trigger vaporize, your pyro attack needs to be hitting an enemy that's affected with hydra. So if you're triggering vaporize, you're not getting this, and if you're getting this, you're not triggering vaporize. Same thing for melt or any other reaction other than like burning, but burning. So all in all, this is kind of just going to very much focus him into monopyro teams. His numbers without this are kind of underwhelming, whereas his numbers with this are actually pretty decent. Basically what he does is he has an empowered charge shot that summons a hat, and after a few seconds, the hat explodes and deals damage. If you do another charge shot while there's a hat on the field, it will make your previous hat explode. You can only have one on the field at once. It also consumes some of his HP to do that. His skill will make any hat that is currently on the field explode. It will deal more damage based on how many stacks, basically how many times you lost HP from firing a charge shot, and it will heal based on how many times you lost HP from firing a charge shot. He can also restore energy whenever he loses HP from firing a charge shot. Basically, he manipulates his own HP, which means that he's going to work with a new Marechaussee artifact set, but it also means that he's generally not going to be full HP that often. Now, for most characters, that's not that big of a deal. But when you look at his base stats, he has incredibly low base defense. And his base HP is somewhat low as well. He's pretty significant. He's squishier than Klee. He's about as squishy as Ganyu, but he consumes his own HP to deal damage, which means that he will be squishier than Ganyu and much squishier than Klee. So that's one thing that you're gonna have to keep in mind with this. He will be very, very, very squishy. And so you have a bit more of an incentive to be playing a defensive focus unit. And then on top of that, because he has that incentive to play pyro units, then that can make an argument for using units like Daya or Shield Fae in his teams. You don't really want to use Toma because you don't want to be doing normal attacks. On top of that, his burst is pretty good, which we're going to be looking at. His burst basically, it makes him transform into a cat and deal damage, and then he summons a hat from his charge shot after his burst is over, and it deals a decent amount of damage. So if you want to be able to use that, you're going to need a decent amount of energy generation, because his particle generation is like okay, nothing crazy. And so because you want to get that energy or that energy generation, that's even more of an incentive to use a character like Daya instead of Zhongli as your defensive option if you do decide to go for a defensive option. So all in all, when it comes to only his damage, he is actually like very good, but he will have a lot of like potential gameplay issues that will make him feel a lot worse to play, and that might, for most people, restrict him to teams that have a lot of defensive utility, which will obviously reduce the amount of damage that the teams are doing. All in all though, he seems pretty good, and that basically does it. So I'm very excited for Fontaine. Obviously, we've been a little bit character starved recently. All the new characters that we've been getting have just been copy pastes and just ugh. So we're finally getting new things. Some of them are actually very cool as well, which is nice. I'm hyped. I hope you guys are too. Keep an eye out for in the next upcoming weeks. I will do a pre-release on Lyney. I'm probably gonna do a pre-release on Lynette and Freminet. Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't think I'll do one on Hydro Traveler because I'm just about the burst moving that much. It just it makes me sad. And then once the like weapons and artifacts get officially announced with a live stream, I'll probably also be making a video just quickly covering any changes that they might have had since like now, as well as going a little bit more in detail in terms of which characters the weapons will be good on. But yeah. Oh, we also have news that a few of the artifacts are going to Strongbox, which is really nice. So basically all of the artifacts up until 3.0. So everything until Deepwood, right? So Echoes, Vermilion, Clam, Husk, Emblem, Shimenawa, Pale Flame, Tenacity. Now the big ones are obviously Tenacity, Emblem, and that's yeah, I mean, those are the two big ones, right? Because Tenacity is kind of held back by being with Pale Flame, because many people don't really care for the Pale Flame. And same thing with Emblem, kind of held back by being with Shimenawa, because Shimenawa is like a fine two-piece set, but it's not very good overall on a lot of characters. So being able to strong boss directly Emblem and Tenacity is going to be really nice. But yeah, so that's going to be it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.